Welcome, esteemed viewer, to another episode of Middle Grade Ninja TV. I'm Rob Kent, author of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees, which is available now on paperback, audiobook, and the ebook is always free to download whenever you're watching this. So as soon as you're done, go get yourself a free copy of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees. Under the name Robert Kent, I've also written some horror novels. The first part of my series, The Book of David, is also available for free. So you can get this downloaded for free as an ebook. The rest of this you'll have to pay for. If you like what you see here today, make sure you check out more at middlegradeninja.com. You can see interviews with hundreds of literary agents, authors, and other publishing professionals, including today's guest, Darby Karchut. And now I'm thrilled to get the chance to hold up someone's paperbacks other than my own, author of Finn, Finnegan, and Gideon Spear. Darby, how are you?
I'm good, Rob. Good to be here. How are you this morning?
I am excellent and fired up. I'm on about my fourth cup of coffee, so I'm ready to go. Darby, tell esteemed viewer a little bit about yourself and your writing.
All right. And I do want to, again, thank you for letting me come and hang out with you today, Rob. And when you said 4 cups of coffee, I'm thinking, well, slacker. I'm probably on my 9th cup. So, get busy on that, boy.
Well, excellent. We'll vibrate our way right off the show.
So how, you asked me how I, kind of a little bit about myself, how I got started writing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us about Darby Karchut and the books you have available, and don't forget to tell us where we can find out more about you online.
Okay. Well, I started writing about 8 years ago. I was teaching social studies, in fact, middle grade social studies, 7th graders at the time. And through a very twisted, convoluted conversation with one of my kiddos, I had an idea for a book, and I started writing very badly. And I wrote the first draft of my debut novel, which was, again, a very bad draft. And I rewrote it about 30 times, learning how to write a book by writing a book, and began the process of getting it published. And then fast forward 8 years now, and I just released my 13th book, Del Toro Moon, excuse my back of my head, which came out October 2nd.
That is a beautiful cover.
Thank you. And I'm going to just take a moment right here, kind of hold it up closer. Riza Riddell, who's a very well-known middle grade author, illustrator, I should say, an illustrator, did the cover for it. And we were so lucky to get her to do the work. Owl Hollow Press is my publisher, and Emma Nelson surprised me and said, "We got Riza to do the cover." And I was simply over the moon. No pun intended.
Well, you should have, but it came out amazing.
Yeah,
I have book cover envy.
Yeah, and book covers are the second most important thing in a book. I mean, the first is the story, second's the book cover, third, I always think it's the title. I think an evocative title can really help sell a book.
Well, I want to talk more about you, but let's stop right there. What is it about a book title, or what are the characteristics for a title that you're looking for specifically to help your books?
I either try to find a title that has a familiar ring to it, but then it's just a little bit off center. Like I could have just said for my Finn book, the first book in my Finnegan series, I could have just said The Adventures of Finn MacCULLEN. And that's kind of a generic sound to it. And so I came up with Finn Finnegan because at the time there was a really popular book called Bud Not Buddy. And I always thought that was a great title for a book. And so I was playing, with the idea of doing something like Finn Not Finnegan, because in the book, the character, young Finn, hates his name Finnegan. And so when people address him as Finnegan, he always goes, "I go by Finn, not Finnegan." So I thought Finn Not Finnegan would be a great title. But at that time, Bud Not Buddy was a very prominent book in the middle grade world. So I thought, well, I'll just shorten it to Finn Finnegan. And the alliteration has a nice ring to it. It's that little quirky title, kind of whimsical, so it fits the nature of the book. Same with Del Toro Moon. I wanted to get the idea that the Del Toro family was in there. The moon is their sigil, that their family has hunted monsters for generations under that sign, under the Del Toro moon sign. So again, I was looking for titles that kind of catch someone's eye, but also catches their ear. So when they say it aloud, there's something about it. And that's all you want as an author, for them to just pause long enough to either pick up the book or read the back cover copy and then go, oh, this sounds like something I might be interested in reading.
And both of those are very melodic titles. Del Toro Moon just sort of rolls right off the tongue. While we're talking about titles, it just occurred to me that I should talk about our mutual friend, Mike Mullin, who gave me some of the greatest advice about titles ever. Mike, of course, is the author of Ashfall. And there's two other books, What Ash and Winter and Sunrise is the third one. And what he learned was it's a post-apocalyptic young adult thriller. Sooner or later, we're going to get Mike to come on the show. It's going to be a great time. But Mike learned in calling his book Ashfall that anytime he was ranked in a young adult list, anytime the only information about his book was the title, because it started with an A and most lists were alphabetical, he was always at the top of that list. And originally I had a book called A Zombie Story. And when Mike told me that, I was like, oh, well, we've got to find an A word. So that's how A Zombie Story became altogether now A Zombie Story. And sure enough, when I make lists on zombie books and they do them alphabetical, there I am right there at the top.
Okay, I'm going to go change the titles of all my books to start with the letter A.
Sure.
Speaking of Mike Mullin, you notice he blurbed Finn Finnegan for me when it first came out. He was a gracious author and took time to do that. And I have always loved his apocalyptic series. So to have his name on the front of one of my books is such an honor.
Well, while we're at it, sure enough, there's a Mike Mullin blurb right at the top of this one. And actually, there's right next to it is a Darby Karchut blurb from Darby Karchut. And I also have the great honor of having been blurbed for Gideon Spear, which I'm misplacing my books. But talk about alliteration. I've always got a kick out of this. The blurb is a fine folio of fantastic fiction. Which I meant as a joke, and then I was so thrilled. It was one of the great moments of running Middle Grade Ninja, was to say, oh my gosh, I'm out and about in the world. People can buy this in a bookstore, and there I am, like a for real reviewer. So it was a very nice moment.
Yeah, I love that. I just went, oh, that is so clever. I wish I had thought of that, but I'm going to grab it and use it. So thank you for doing
But there is a fourth book in the series, and you want to call it that. You have my total permission. Go right ahead.
I will. Thank you.
Well, we have plugged the heck out of Mike Mullin. Let's talk more about Darby Karchut. I wanted to ask you, because I was reading that you've got a degree in anthropology and a master's in education. Do I have that right?
Yes, exactly.
And I wanted to ask you about that background. And of course, you're teaching social studies for a day job. And I want to know, because it's a little bit off the beaten path from, I've got a degree in literature and creative writing, very, very plain Jane. A lot of the writers I know have gone on to get very expensive MFA degrees in writing. And what I find is with those MFA programs, a lot of times is for the first 5 years, those writers are producing books about other books, because that's what they've been studying nonstop for 6-8 years, however long it took to complete the program. So how do you feel that having such a diverse background in subjects beyond mere literature, how has that impacted your writing? What does that bring to your books?
Great question, and something I am passionate about. I think all authors, in fact, all artists, and not just literary, but all art forms, need to be students of the world. And the more you know about this world we live in, the history of it, the different cultures, languages, the economic situations, government, current events, past events, the more you know about stuff like that, the more real it makes your art. Even if it's just subconsciously, you're going to bring extra depth to whatever you create, the more you know. And my degree in anthropology really was a direct step or outcome of falling in love with the Lord of the Rings trilogy when I was, 10 or 11 years old. And Tolkien got me fascinated by history and world cultures. And world cultures in that book and history got me interested in anthropology. I grew up in New Mexico, and so my degree is in Southwest anthropology, which led me to be even more interested in other world cultures, which led me to start studying mythologies from other cultures, which led me to teach social studies. I retired 4 years ago, so I don't teach anymore. But teaching social studies led me to start writing fantasy adventure books for boys. So, it's a lovely circle, and nothing is ever wasted. Anything you learn in life, you will use somewhere else. You just never know where. I've recently learned how to restucco the outside of my house and do some minor plumbing, and I love that. And somewhere it's going to show up in a book. I don't know where, but it's like you and I were talking the other day on your middle grade ninja site. We were talking about that famous quote from Michelangelo that I think it was age 87. He said, "I am still learning." I love that phrase. I don't want to stop learning. I don't want to stop trying new things, like doing these live, interviews. Really tough for an introvert like me. But every time you push yourself outside of that comfort zone, you grow a little, you learn a little, and it all comes back into your art.
So when you look back on your artist journey up to this point, which we know obviously is going to be continuing for some time, 13 books is soon going to become 26 books. I'm counting on it, and come back here and talk about every one of them every time one comes out. But as you look back, do you see sort of a clear path that, oh, that this didn't make sense to me then, but this led to this, which led me here? Or is it just sort of a scattered um, set of events that have made you the person that you are?
That's interesting. My husband and I always joke that life is never a straight line, that it meanders all over the place. But you're right. Looking back, um, you'll see events that happen that needed to happen sequentially to get a person to where they are. But that's the fun part of looking back in life is you can say, I see now the threads that came together to make this happen. But when you're in the middle of it, it all just seems like a mishmash. When you get to be my age, you start realizing to trust the things turn out the way they're supposed to turn out. And I never dreamed of being a writer. I never wrote a thing until I turned 50 years old. Writing was hard. Who would want to be a writer? I tried to take classes in college that I didn't have to write. Um, but, there's an old saying that you read and you read and you read, gorging yourself on the written word, and then one day you vomit up your own book. And I think that's what happened with me.
You were avoiding reading or not reading, writing at a young age. So what was it the change for you that flipped and said, okay, I'm going to do 30 drafts and stick with this?
Well, I always read as a kid. I was a voracious reader. There's a famous author, Pam Allen, who said, reading is breathing in, writing is breathing out. And I've always thought that was really true. I just inhaled for a really long time. Yeah, I do live in Colorado. Um, but it was really funny. Okay, I'll just come out. I don't tell a lot of people this. I got interested in writing because I started writing fan fiction. Ready for it?
Oh yes,
Foothills.
this is the kind of rare details you can only
Yeah,
get here at Middle Grade Ninja TV.
that's
Continue.
right. I started writing fan fiction for Foyle's War. And Foyle's War was a BBC mystery set during World War II in Great Britain. And I love the series. And just for grins, I wrote a couple of fan fiction pieces and posted them on some fan site, thinking, okay, that was fun, and then I'll go on with my life. But I got a pretty good response on it. And I thought, hmm, this writing business, this is kind of fun. I wonder if I could write my own book. Yeah, because I don't live in New York City, and I'm not you have to be a famous person to be a writer. But I thought, so I started reading a little bit about authors, and I realized they lived all over the world, and so I thought maybe I could write my own book. And then as that idea was kind of gelling in my head, one of my students was reading another book, the Ranger's Apprentice series, which I love. And I said, it's a great story. Um, and he said, yeah, but why is it in so many middle grade and YA books, the parents are gone, or they're missing, or they're bad, or they're evil, or they're stupid? Why are parents always portrayed that way? And I thought pretty insightful for a 13-year-old to say that. So I started thinking about it. Why is it that parents are always bad or inept or missing? So I started writing my first series that featured a strong father and son relationship, master and apprentice more. And I really liked that. I thought there was some great storytelling there. And, that morphed into another series and morphed into more books. And it just kind of became my brand. A relationship I like to explore. Um, of course, there's others, but that's been a lot of fun. So I don't know if that answered your question. I kind of rambled
No, it
there.
did. I'm relating a little bit because that was a similar sticking point that I had with middle grade fiction, is the writers taking the easy way out and killing off the parents on page one, and now James gets on the giant peach, and it's well, now the parents could have been alive and just on land that whole time. There was no reason to kill them. But so with Banneker Bones, I've got this extended family for Banneker, which sounded like a great idea for the first novel, but now I'm midway through book three. And I'm starting to see, if I had killed those parents, this would really remove a lot of the obstacles I'm having to overcome now in the story. So,
I really think that when you can have solid adults in books, it gives your preteen and teen characters something to resonate against. They can still be the hero of the story. In fact, if the adult gets in trouble and the kid has to save the adult, that makes the kid even more heroic. So I do think it really gives the kid characters a chance to shine when they can be just as competent and heroic as the adults. Still make a mistake, still blundering along, but it gives a more realistic view of the world. The kids growing up nowadays don't live in societies that are just teenagers and nothing else. We live in a society with all kinds of people, with elderly, with infants, and we need to we need to be we need to be honest with the readers we write for and say this is the world you live in. And some adults are going to be pretty crappy, and some are going to be amazing. And that's okay to give them amazing adult characters in books, especially boys. I have a real passion for writing for our boys, because boys who read grow up to become men who think and feel. And so we need to keep our boys readers, even though right now in the book world there's a big push. There should be no boy books or girl books. I agree with that, but right now we don't have that option. We don't have that luxury. We need to keep our boys reading. Girls will read more widely. Boys are a little more picky. So if I can keep one kiddo a reader, then yay, I've done my job.
I'm gonna leapfrog 'cause I wanna talk about some of your individual books, but there is a strong father-son theme through most of your fiction, certainly in Del Toro Moon, and in Finn Finnegan as well. So what is it about that relationship of a father and son that speaks to you, that makes you want to revisit that again, book after book?
I do get asked that question a lot because, people always say, how can you write boys and how come you want to write boys? Because, well, you're not one. And I go, well, clearly not. I'm a middle aged woman. But there's something about both the master and apprentice relationship, which is a very primal one. If you look at male archetypes and you look at the patriarch and the warrior and, the king and all the different archetypes in there, that's a pretty old one. And you look at the hero's journey, your hero always has the wise mentor. And I think there is some great storytelling embedded in that very complex relationship. So whether it's master and apprentice, uncle and nephew, father and son, there's some great storytelling in there, and I'm not done exploring it quite yet. Um, there'll be other books I'll write that'll probably have girls in it, and I have written an adult series that had a strong female warrior in it, and those were fun. But I do find myself coming back to the father son master apprentice relationship. Um, it's just like people who write romance books, and in every one of their romance books, they have a guy and girl falling in love. And people never say, well, aren't you done exploring that? No, because it's infinite. And the relationship, any relationship between two human beings is infinite and has storytelling embedded in it. And I draw a lot on archetypes, and those, the master, the wise mentor, and then the young hero, ancient primal archetypes. Great place to start every story.
I wanted to ask you, kind of piggybacking off that, in your guest post, "Be Like Michelangelo," which is available now at middlegradeninja.com. Everybody, there's a lot of great practical information just about what makes a middle grade book in that post. I'll make sure I link to it in this video. Make sure you check it out. But in that post, you talk a lot about character being the most important aspect of a story. And then I think of the great Robert McKee, which the writing workshops I teach roll their eyes and get sick of me talking about how brilliant Robert McKee is, but he is. Buy a copy of Story. It's amazing. It'll change your life. But one of his quotes is, oh, and how I've built it up, and I'm suddenly having a brain fart on what the actual quote is. It's, oh, character is structure, structure is character. So there's no way to determine a plot without first leaning toward character. And I take the opposite approach. I think that if you have the world's most interesting character, but not an exciting plot, your story's not going anywhere. Why is it, and then there is no right answer to this because all of art is opinion, but why is it that for you, character is the most important place to start?
Well, for me, character drives the story, and especially with kids, they have to love the character, and if they don't care if the character's in danger, um, or they don't care what kind of danger the character may be in, unless they love that character. So I always start with strong character. It drives the story. It gives us a reason to want them to get out of danger, or we want them to succeed at whatever mission they're on. So for me, strong character starts. And when I have a strong character, I find that I can ratchet up the action so much easier than when I don't have a good sense of the character. So for me, I always start with strong character. And one of the things, and I know I mentioned this before, I'm a big proponent of always starting with archetypes. And archetypes aren't the same as stereotypes. Maybe we can come back to that later in this podcast. But I like to start with an archetype and then really blend a couple of them together to come up with the character. And then once I've got my character, the second most important thing for me is their name. And I have this thing about collecting names. So whenever I hear an interesting name, I write it in this old notebook of mine by subject. Like lately, I've been collecting names that you would hear in an old Western, um, because I've got some ideas from some books I want to explore. So I collect names, and I collect
Possibly sequels to Del Toro Moon or Del Toro Moon adjacent novels?
well, you never know. I collect names based on how they sound and what their meaning is, so that every character's name, um, the meaning of their name, also parallels their personality. So my first series was the Griffin Rising series, and Griffin was a young um, guardian angel who lived among humans. And the word Griffin means strong in faith. And he was a guardian angel who had kind of lost his way. And then his mentor was the very worldly Basil. And Basil means kingly. And he was quite a kingly character. So every time I choose characters' names, um, there's always a reason behind it. Like Finn MacCullen is actually, well, that whole book was actually based on the Irish mythology Finn MacCullen or Finn MacCool. And so Finn MacCool, I morphed into Finn MacCullen. Gideon Lear was based on the old Welsh trickster Gwydion, but I changed it to Gideon. So every
Well,
name
that makes sense. He's a very much a trickster character.
very much, yeah. So I love to change. Um, I love to make sure the name is just perfect for each character. Um, in Del Toro Moon, my latest book, which has not only a family of father and two sons who hunt monsters in Southern Day, Colorado, they have talking Andalusian war stallions that help them. And the war stallions' names I had the most fun picking out. So you have three main characters in Del Toro Moon who are the horses. You have the wise, avuncular figure of El Cid. And El Cid is the white stallion that Matt is partnered with, because El Cid's the most, the one with the most experience, and young Matt is the greenhorn. And El Cid is his best friend. He grew up with El Cid in his life always. And of course, El Cid was the name of the famous Spanish warrior from the Middle Ages who helped save Spain from the Moors' invasion. And El Cid is a national hero of the Spanish people and a great warrior. And so that white stallion had to be named El Cid. The father in Del Toro Moon, Javier Del Toro, rides a big, just mean-spirited, grumpy black stallion whose name is Turk. Turk, of course, being a young warrior in the business world, the Young Turks. But it also rhymes with the word jerk, because he's so mean to the boys that Matt and his brother Ben call him Turk the Jerk. Had to have it. And then they have a third uh, war horse who hunts with them, Isabel, Izzy, and she is a feminist at heart, and she thinks she can do just as well as the stallions, and she does. She's a great warrior. She was named after the San Isabel Forest in southern Colorado, where the whole story is set. So again, names are so important. It's from those names I start developing their personalities, and from the personality, here comes the plot. So, long story short, to me, characters will always drive the plot. Plots can be the plot can be expanded if you have really great characters.
Let's talk more about Del Toro Moon. I'm not going to give it justice. If you could give us just the elevator pitch or the summary for those foolish enough to have embarked on this episode without having first read Del Toro Moon. As soon as you're done watching, go get your copy. We're going to convince you today this is a book you don't want to miss. But tell esteemed viewer about the book.
Okay, so basically it's about a 12-year-old boy and his family who, aided by talking Andalusian war horses and carrying magical maces, which are war clubs, hunt monsters in modern-day southern Colorado. And their task is, since the 1600s, their family has guarded, the local people from monsters in this region. And so the family has to go out periodically into the canyon lands where you can't get vehicles. And they go on their horses and they keep the number of skinners, which are the monsters, down to a minimum. And there are families like the Del Toros scattered all over the Southwest. This is an ancient group who came over to the New World centuries ago and have stayed here to guard the people from monsters. So you have the Navars down in New Mexico and the Montoyas out in Arizona. And I just focused on the Del Toro family. And the book is as much about monster hunting and weapons, but it's also about the power of family love, the love of this dad for his two boys, the love the two boys have for each other, although Matt's older brother, Ben's, can be a typical older brother, and the power of love between Matt and El Cid. And El Cid's like a second father to Matt, and they're very close. And Matt's coming of age, and Matt wants to be a great hunter like his dad, but he doesn't know if he can. And like every 12-year-old, you don't know if you can live up to the family reputation. And so it was a lot of fun to write. It was really, I would say, of all my books, it's my hands down favorite. It was the book of my heart. I've always wanted to write about talking horses. I could have done talking dragons, but my families are they're caballeros from way back, so they're horsemen. They're not dragon riders. Oh, speaking of dragons, one of my favorite books of all time, Naomi Novak's Temeraire series. Have you read that?
I haven't. Should I add it right to the top of the list?
Add it, because think Master and Commander, but with dragons. So she has the Napoleonic War going on with the Navy, the Army, but now an Air Force where they ride dragons. So great series. I loved it. Pick it up. Yeah.
We should rewrite whatever they've got on the cover and put that on front, because that'll move books.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me ask you about Del Toro Moon. And
Sure.
I've got a bunch of questions I want to unpack just from your description. But one thing that really struck me as I read it is what an amazing opening you've got. I'm a sucker for a great opening because I'm a firm believer that if you don't nail your opening, don't worry about the middle or the ending. The reader's already doing something else. And that opening just grabs you right there on from that first sentence. You've got a tremendous cliffhanger there at the end of the first chapter that there's no way you could possibly set the book down. Slight spoiler, I guess, for chapter one. We open with our hero Matt Del Toro getting ready to face his first Skinner. And no sooner is one Skinner dispatched than four more show up, and that's how the chapter ends. And well, am I going to put this book down when poor Matt might be eaten by four Skinners, or am I going to keep going? So talk a little bit about the opening and what you're trying to achieve, and also how many times did you rewrite that opening?
Oh gosh, that's a great question because, um, like you and I have talked it in the past. I usually try to write my ending scene first. So I always write the last chapter first or the last scene first in a book. And I kind of did that with this. But this book kind of came out of nowhere one day. And it was that first line that just kind of popped into my head. The one that's, now I'm trying to remember my first line. Oh, the worst thing about riding point on your first hunt, waiting to see if you're going to die on your first hunt. And as soon as those words came into my head, I thought, well, who's hunting? Why is it his first hunt? And then I had to go, write the story around it. Um, but I
So you
wanted to,
started with just that opening line because it is a
yeah,
killer.
yeah. Hey, Tolkien started with a hole in the ground. There lived a hobbit on the back of a paper he was grading when he was a professor, and he said, "What's a hobbit? Why does it live in a hole?" And from there, as we know, history came about. But yeah, that opening line, and I wanted to set the tone. This is my first book I ever written in first person. All my books have been written in third person point of view, and um, I tried first person to get Matt's voice just right, and I wanted kind of that a little bit snarky, a little bit sarcastic, but not too much because Matt's a worrier and he's a little unsure of himself. He's not quite as cocky as Big Brother Ben. So I used that first opening line to kind of set up Matt's personality, and then I know I wanted to make sure right away that the reader knew that these not only were these family on horseback, but that the horses could talk and that the horses don't get along. So El Cid, and Turk were immediately sniping at each other from day one. But then Turk would argue with a stump. So, that's his nature. And I wanted Dad's nature to come right out. So I put it all together. But of course, you got to have a mini cliffhanger at the end of a chapter. And it's hard to remember to put them on the end of every chapter, but with your first chapter, you absolutely want to keep that reader going. And, the goal of every writer is to make sure that the reader is sleep deprived and never can, get to bed on time because they're reading your book.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I always worry that if you get to the end of that chapter and you don't have some kind of cliffhanger, that's a moment they might, a lot of these books I'm reading here on my phone, depending on where I'm out and about in the world. And if you don't have me hooked to keep going, I might check my email or check Twitter, and then you've lost me.
Yep. Yep. And, we're in a society where like you said, there are so much competition for people's entertainment, not only their attention, but their entertainment dollar. And so we have to really give them a product that they feel, wow, this is worth my time and worth my money to get involved in. So, of course, I always believe that books will always be here. And because every medium needs good storytelling, music needs a good story, and art needs a story, and certainly movies need stories. And so we as storytellers will always be in demand.
And what is it that for you get from a book that you can't get from a movie or a video game or any other medium?
Um, well, I think with a book, it's, you know, video game and movies to me are passive, and a book is active. And book becomes alive when a reader picks it up. And so for me, reading a book is almost a form of meditation because you literally do lose yourself, and it lets parts of your mind just take a break, the analytical part of your mind, and you can just be in the book and be in the story. And, you bring more to it than just the passive reading of the words. You bring your own background knowledge, your own schema, it's called, that you bring to a book. And so what you think a character may look like or act like will be different from the next person reading it. But it makes the book yours by doing that. Where a movie, they already tell you everything. So passive entertainment versus active entertainment.
And I know when I first interviewed you, again, that interview available at middlegradeninja.com. When I first interviewed you, you were very rigid. You told me you did not watch television outside of Game of Thrones or the occasional football game, and you were reading for 3 hours every night. Is that still pretty accurate?
Yeah, of course. I've left the teaching field, and I still go back in fact, every week I still go back to my junior high at noon and help out with a book club that we've been running for, I don't know, 10 years. And so, I'm still involved with that age group, and I do a lot of school visits because I still love hanging out with kiddos. But I do try to be pretty regimented with myself. I try to write 3 or 4 hours a day. I try to still read, try to get through a couple of books a week. Um, right now, I'm doing a lot of editing and promotion and, that business side of books, which is just, part and parcel of the author's life. So I still try to stay pretty dedicated to my schedule. What I like now is I'm a morning person, so I love the fact that I can write in the morning instead of the evenings, and that's been really nice.
So what time of morning is ideal for you? And by the way, you do not sound that retired. What's the golden hour for writing?
Um, uh, you're asking what time I start writing in the morning?
Yeah, typically.
Okay. Well, usually I get up, and my husband and I, we love running and biking and mountain climbing. We just got back from 2 weeks in Patagonia and did a big week-long trek there, and it was amazing. And so we try to work out every day. So we get up real early, try to be out on the trail, and my battery's going dead, so I'm just going to pause. Everybody think happy thoughts. I'm just going to grab my charger.
Sure. While she's gone, I suppose I could talk with you a little bit about Toro Moon. Let's enjoy the opening together. This will be hopefully entertaining. I'll pull it up right now. So I really am fired up about this opening. I was teaching a writing workshop last weekend talking about great openings, and I went to Gone by Michael Grant, but I think I'm going to start using Toro Moon instead. Here we go. Toro Moon by Darby Karchut. Worst thing about riding point on my first hunt, waiting to find out if I was going to die on my first hunt. Of course, when we Del Toro said hunting, we meant monster hunting, or as my big brother Ben called it, the family rodeo. Nervous sweat soaked my hands and neck. It didn't help the sun was dialed to extra crispy. The towering sandstone and granite cliffs surrounding us corralled the summer day and turned the 3-square-mile valley into a giant oven. The heat of the soil radiated through the soles of my cowboy boots, easing from foot to foot. I wondered how long it took to be baked alive. And I won't make you listen to me read your entire book to you. But what I really love about that is, one, obviously it's got that great hook in there. We know monsters are coming. But as this goes, we also get a real sense of who Matt is, because immediately we've got some of that snark you mentioned. We're getting a feel for that. And you've got your hands full with a lot of fantasy to introduce. This is a world with talking horses. This is a world with a rich mythology, and that is completely unlike our world. And you're working all of those details in while setting up a monster hunt. And you're doing it all right there within a confined chapter. And then another thing that I noticed that you did is you had some fairly graphic, middle grade graphic violence just right off the bat. And I wonder if that's to set the tone or to warn parents or teachers who might be reading that, hey, this is what you're getting into. There is going to be this level of violence throughout. And for some young fans that want to see the monsters meet violent ends, that hopefully exciting them and getting them involved. Darby, have I lost you completely?
Robert, I think I lost you. Hold on.
I think we can still hear you. Oh, there you are.
Okay, hi. Can you see me okay?
I sure can. Are you charged up and ready to go?
I am.
Fantastic. So, tell us a little bit about the violence in Del Toro Moon and how you knew when you were being too violent for middle grade.
Oh, that's a good question. You know, the thing with I love about monsters is the more I want to say humanoid, but the more humanoid they are, the more I'm careful not to make the violence too realistic. So in Finn Finnegan, the Amadon, the goblin-like creatures are a little more humanoid. So I made their destruction a little less graphic. But because the Skinners are like these big, I don't know, kind of just wolf-like creatures that look like they're made out of raw hamburger, basically. So I made that kind of violence could be a little more graphic, just a touch. Um, More just gross graphic, like, oh, they kind of splattered, but nothing more than that, just a little touch of it. That's the great thing about fantasy books is that they let, oops, did I lose you again?
Nope, you're
Um,
here.
okay, they let, um, oops, I think I lost you.
No, you're here, but we're only getting audio.
Okay, do you see me now?
Yes, we do. You're
Okay,
back.
okay, sorry. I bear with me, esteemed audience. We may be muddling through here. We've got a neophyte techie on this end, so I apologize to your audience.
Well,
Um,
if people wanted to see broadcasting professionals, there's plenty of that available. We are writers.
and yeah, it won't be here. So if it keeps fading in and out, I'll keep coming back to you. Just bear with me, everybody. Um,
Okay.
and there it goes again. Here we are. And I totally lost the thread of what you had asked me.
We were talking about violence in middle grade, and I wanted to use that as an opportunity to segue into my next question, which is Matt, slight spoiler, may or may not have a romantic interest as the story develops. So I'd also like to know what are your tips for writing romance in middle grade? How do you know when you're not making your audience, which is primarily boys, start to say, ick, I don't want to read a romance novel. I want to read about monsters. How do you pull back on that, but still tell an honest romantic story?
It's like, oh no, is this a kissing book? Yeah. It's funny because with Matt, he was kind of like, oh, I like Perry. She's nice. I like her. And Perry totally didn't feel that way about Matt. So the romance, or it was really a crush, was pretty much one sided. Um, Perry just likes Matt as a friend. But this is that age where especially boys and girls are kind of practicing what it feels like. And so you can have little touches of it. But in middle grade, romance is always pretty much off the screen. It's more first time crushes, maybe older middle grade might get maybe a first sweet kiss. But with middle grade, you keep romance pretty mild. YA and new adult can get pretty steamy, but middle grade is always the first. That's the thing about middle grade. There's so many firsts, first crushes, first times you realize your parents aren't infallible, first big heartbreaks, first big losses, and I think that's what really sums up the difference between middle grade and YA is it's firsts.
Well, that makes me think when I had Barbara Shoup on here a couple episodes back, she was talking about her love of YA books and how there was definitely an element of it that was she was still trying to be cool in high school, still trying to go back and do a little bit of revisionist history of what her own high school experience was. With middle grade, do you find that there's some truth to that, or is it more just about finding out what this is for Matt and for Finn and for the other characters?
Are you talking about romance or just the whole feel of that
Just
age group?
first in general. Obviously, I assume you've never encountered a Skinner in real life. Although if you have, that's you're a fool for not using that in marketing. Get out there, tell that story.
Why, yes, I hunt Skinners. No,
Worked for
that's
Whitley Strieber. Oh, sick burn! I got his communion cover right back here. I love that cover, but that book is some bullcrap. But let's move on.
that's great.
The
Oh my
horror
God.
writer that suddenly becomes addicted or abducted by aliens. Get out of here.
Oh, you're a nut. Yeah. You
Sick
know,
burn on Whitley Strieber. He's going to be watching this. I was so excited to buy my copy of Del Toro Moon, and they slammed me. I don't know why. He's still being sunset.
monsters. I was just thinking about what you asked about monsters. Um, you know, fantasy books. Let me back up. Fantasy books, and I do believe this, helps kids learn how to handle fear and being scared and being angry, and explore it in kind of a safe venue, which is the book, so that as they get older and realize that a lot of times monsters are real, and that often it's other humans that are monsters. They've had a little practice by reading books on how to deal with being scared and how to come through on the other side. So I don't know if that helps any, but thought I'd throw that out.
It does. It makes sense. Let's see. Let me think what I wanted to make sure I ask you about Del Toro Moon before we start talking about Finn Finnegan. I wanted to ask you about talking horses, because
Yes.
these are just absolutely first-rate talking animals. If there's anybody at Disney that's working on the next talking animal saga, read this book, learn from Darby Karchut and what she's done. So, what are your tips and secrets for writing talking animals?
Well, it's funny because another writer friend of mine said, talking horses could get real Disney real fast because it can be kind of silly. So I had to make sure that when I wrote these characters, I wrote them just as I would write a human character, because race, gender, species doesn't matter. Good character is good character. So, like I did with all my characters, I started with archetypes. And so I took the wise patriarch archetype for El Cid, but overlaid another ancient archetype, the warrior, to come up kind of with his um, just, with his personality. And then I took the trickster warrior to have Turk. So I just made sure I wrote those horse characters um, just as I'm sorry, my there we go. Sorry about that. I wrote those horse characters just as I would, a human character, and gave them flaws and gave them strengths and gave them personalities and let them make mistakes. And I just thought it was so much fun, but overlaid, of course, with an equine view of the world.
Let's talk just a little bit about Finn Finnegan, and then I've got just some general questions about writing that I want to throw at you, technical disruptions allowed. And then
Okay.
I'll let you, I want to be respectful of your time, and I want you to get working on the next Del Toro Moon.
Okay.
Del Toro 2, or whatever you decide to call it.
Yeah.
But tell esteemed viewers just a little bit about Finn Finnegan and that series.
Okay. Finn Finnegan, 4-book series, put out by Spencer Hill Press, is based on the ancient Irish legend of Finn MacCool, who was quite a trickster warrior as a young boy. Um, there's also the famous Tuatha De Danann, which are a warrior people from ancient Ireland. And so I blended that all together, stuck them in modern day Colorado Springs on the west side where there's a lot of abandoned gold mines, because Colorado's, big gold state. And I had
So when
these
you're
Amahas.
jogging in the morning, are you running? Or are you out looking for gold?
I wish, but we're all pretty panned out here, Pikes Peak or bust. Well, it was a bust. um, And it's funny because the running trails in the foothills by my house is exactly where Finn Finnegan is set. So, I will run by and I think I know exactly in the book where that scene is. And of course, crows are a big part of Irish mythology. So I had some crows, which kind of warned young Finn and his mentor Gideon if monsters are nearby. And it's funny because when I go talk to kids at school, whenever they see crows on the playground, they're like, "Oh my gosh, there's monsters!" I'm like, always believe the crow. So anyway, I loved it. It was fun to talk about Irish mythology in those books. Something I've always loved to explore. Right now, of course, I'm exploring kind of Western motifs. I'm blending two genres, fantasy and old school Western, which is what Toro Moon was, and really, really enjoyed that.
Let me ask you something you said earlier about Toro Moon, is that it's right now your favorite book, and I wanted to
Mhm.
ask, is that always true of the book that you're writing, or just of the book that's done, or is it Toro Moon in particular?
Good question. For me, that really is my favorite book I've written. Now, of course, I say that, and I might write one in the future, and I go, "Sorry, Del Toro Moon, you're going to have to take second place." But my second favorite book is actually called Hound at the Gate, and that is the third Finn book. You know, it's not even the first one or the last one; it was the third one. But Hound at the Gate, until I wrote Del Toro Moon, had been my favorite book I'd ever written. Because in a way it was a love letter to the state of Colorado. And I love my adopted state very much. So I enjoyed Hound at the Gate. Plus they played the ancient Irish sport of hurling, which is like lacrosse and hockey combined, and that was fun to write. So Hound at the Gate was my second favorite book. And then Del Toro Moon is my first favorite book until I write another book, which who knows, that might become my next one.
That's something I'm guilty of. Is every book I'm writing is going to be my best book I've ever written, and probably my favorite thing until it's done. And then I hate it for a little bit, and then I love it again. And then when I start the next book, it's again the most beautiful book ever because it's done, it's finished. I wish I were still there, just polishing, as opposed to digging in and getting going with a whole new project.
I know what you mean. You fall in love with those characters. You don't want to lose them. And I think I may have lost my picture, but I'll keep talking to you. Um, may have lost the screen here, Rob. Sorry.
Oh no,
Um,
you're just fine. And
okay.
half of our viewership will be listening rather than watching anyway, so I think we'll be all right.
Okay. I can't seem to see you again, but I'll just keep talking then. Um, but yeah, like I said, it could be that a book in the future will be one that I love. But right now, Del Toro Moon is my favorite.
Let's uh, let's kind of start to wrap things up since we just can't seem to shake these technical disruptions.
Oh,
But
right.
one thing I always want to ask people or authors that I have on here is, what advice do you wish someone had told you when you were starting writing? What's the advice you most want to share with young writers?
Is to read everything you can and read outside your genre. I mean, I love middle grade and I read a lot of middle grade, um, but read everything you can. Read history, read biographies, read poetry, and read poetry because it'll teach you the beauty of language. Just read everything you can. And also, when you start writing, remember nobody's going to read your first draft. So just slam it out as fast as you can. You can always revise later.
What is next for Darby Karchut? I know you've got Spanish Red coming, and then have you got more projects on the horizon we can look forward to?
Um, right now, I'm working on a couple of ideas. You know how it goes, Rob, when you've got about three books in your head and you can't seem to settle on one to work on. So I'm kind of in that mode right now. And then pretty soon I'll be starting with edits on Spanish Red, and that'll keep me busy for quite a while.
Well, that one's got, does that one have a firm release date already assigned to it?
Um, Actually, I'm going to talk to my publisher on Wednesday, I believe. But I think right now we're aiming at fall 2019, so about a year from now.
Okay. I know that there's already a cover, and we're telling everybody about it, so I'm looking forward to it. So I assume that lights a little bit of a fire under you when you need to work, as opposed to starting a brand new project when you know that no matter what, somebody's going to be paying money for that book here in the near future.
Yeah, and actually that cover that's there is a temporary one. We don't have the real one yet. That's just kind of a placeholder cover.
Oh,
So,
okay. Well, it's a really nice placeholder.
well, yeah, Owl Hollow Press, which is run by the phenomenal Emma Nelson, is just been amazing to work with, and they come out with the best covers. I can't speak I can't speak higher about them. They're just the top notch publishing house.
Darby, remind Steam viewer where they can find out more about you. Go ahead and give us your website again.
Okay, it's www.darbykarchut.com. and everything you need is on there. And I always respond to emails, so if people have questions, just drop me a line.
And I know that you're on Facebook because I'm forever seeing posts of you having run up some mountain or done something really athletic that make me feel guilty. Like I should have done that this morning, but I just lifted weights in my garage and called it a day because I had something else I wanted to do. Other than Facebook, what other social media platforms are you on? Where can people connect with you?
Okay, I'm also on Twitter under, Darby Karchut, and on Instagram, which I'm just kind of getting my feet under me, so bear with me on Instagram. And once again, I want to apologize for the technical problem on your podcast, Rob. I hope I didn't mess it up too bad.
No, you're excellent. You have been a absolutely wonderful guest. It's been such a thrill to have you here that I would put up with another hour's worth of technical difficulties if it meant I could continue to ask questions. But I don't want to lose the signal completely. So I think we should probably start to think about calling it a day. Thank you so much for being here. Everyone watching, make sure you check us out at middlegradeninja.com. Don't forget to download your free copy of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees. Don't forget to be watching for Spanish Red, and for certain, pick up a copy of Del Toro Moon. It is, and it doesn't say this on the cover, but trust me, it's a horror novel for the middle grade set with a bit of Western elements and a little bit of romance, a tiny bit. So a little bit of everything.
All right.
Well, Darby, thanks so much for being here, esteemed viewer. We'll see you next week when my guest will be Mary Cole. So make sure you come back on Monday. Do not miss that episode, and we will see you then.